Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with, if I could choose only one recording by artist X, it would have to be, well, L. Artist X is Leonard Bernstein, the conductor. We're not doing Leonard Bernstein, the composer. That's a different set of videos that we're working on, isn't it? But we're talking about the conductor. And of course, we could include his own works in work L, or whatever we would be putting in. But no, Leonard Bernstein was a really multifaceted genius, and he did so many things for so much interesting repertoire. I mean, he did Nielsen when no one else was doing Nielsen. He did Janáček's Glagolitic Mass in the 60s. I mean, how did that happen? He did Bernstein's Airborne Symphony. He was an advocate of Roussel's Third Symphony. Really just an amazing polymath. Educator, composer. He was a genius. Let's just face it. He was a genius and a tremendously compelling conductor. And of course, the composer he did the most for, more than probably anybody else to advocate for, was Mahler. I mean, there was Mahler before Bernstein. Everybody tries to say, well, yes, there was Mahler before Bernstein. But before Bernstein took on Mahler, I don't think anybody conducted him with the same kind of conviction and the sense that you were hearing it the way Mahler wanted you to hear it. Now, nowadays, I read comments all the time. People can't stand Bernstein. They think he was schlocky and that he was excessively sentimental. And it's all bullshit. Frankly, if you look at the scores and you look at what Bernstein does, nobody was more faithful to both the spirit and the letter of those scores than Mahler was. And that's just the way it was. Bernstein's Mahler, the two were inextricably associated. And so I have chosen as the recording L to represent Bernstein, if I could only have only one that the evil god Cancresans would have to preserve if he destroyed all else. That performance is Haydn's Paris Symphonies. Obviously. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. First of all, for the evil god Cancresans, you're not going to get to hear Bernstein's Mahler unless you let everything else survive so that it survives. That's a sort of dig at the evil god who wants to stomp and rain on our parade. But even more importantly than that, Bernstein, I think, did as much for Haydn as he did for Mahler, and he gets no credit for it. It blows my mind, really blows my mind. See, Mahler was an underdog he could root for, and everyone else took it up. Everybody. So Bernstein's Mahler is now, primus inter pares, first among equals, one among many fabulous Mahler performances for each of these works. And it doesn't really matter that he may have been the first to do it or whatever. There's just lots of great Mahler out there and many different interpretations of Mahler out there. And so to that extent, I think Bernstein's achievement as a Mahler conductor is less important than his achievement as a Haydn conductor, which in many ways has never been equaled. He was quite simply the greatest Haydn conductor of the 20th century, which means he's the greatest Haydn conductor that ever lived, because, that's all we have for Haydn. This set has never been surpassed. The 6 Paris Symphonies. This is amazing. And consider he was doing this stuff in the 1960s when nobody cared about Haydn. They barely cared about Mozart outside of the operas in the last 3 symphonies. But Haydn, and he did the Paris Symphonies, and he did all the London Symphonies, and he did a whole pile of the Masses, and he did the Creation. And, his interest in Haydn is little explored in the Bernstein literature because Haydn always gets screwed. He always gets short shrift. I don't know why. Short shrift, pardon me. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Probably because he wasn't a romantic. He didn't write big, huge, self-evidently grandiose pieces for the enormous modern symphony orchestra. But Haydn's music sounds best when played by the enormous modern symphony orchestra. And it doesn't matter whether it's his first symphony or his 104th. His writing for the orchestra has this essential quality that just benefits from having larger forces, doubled winds, I mean, just, the more muscle and contrast that you can build into the performance, the better it sounds. And this is not to besmirch some marvelous period instrument performances of Haydn as well. But quite frankly, what they need to struggle to do for Haydn, modern orchestras can do, potentially, can do easily. Big contrasts in dynamic, big contrasts in timbre, wonderful, balances between the massed strings and the bass line that's always so important, that Haydn said was so important, and that very few period instrument people give the importance that Haydn said it had in his music. Really, it's extraordinary how fabulous these pieces sound when played by large modern orchestras. And in Haydn's own day, if you look at people like, Baillot, who wrote, L'Art du Violon, whatever that was, the big violin treatise. He talks about Haydn's Trauer Symphony, number 44, I think it is, where how wonderful the slow movement sounds when played with a really large string section. Everybody knew it. Now, Haydn very seldom had those forces, except for the big oratorios at the end of his life. He didn't have large orchestral forces until he got to London, where in his second London visit, he had an orchestra of at least 60 players, which is essentially a modern symphony orchestra with double winds and the whole deal. I mean, he had that and wrote for it with glee. And the Paris symphonies were written for Europe's largest standing orchestra, the orchestra of the Loge Olympique, or the Concert Spirituel, or whatever they called it. The Chevalier de Saint-Georges was the conductor. They had 40 violins. They had all the winds doubled. And he had that in mind when he wrote these. And you can tell these are big, big symphonies, bold in conception, because Haydn was always bold in conception. The concept was always a big concept. And I don't mean big in terms of sheer size. I mean big in terms of musical daring in musical ways, harmonic interest, contrapuntal interest, formal ingenuity. All of those things were big ideas, and they sound best when given a bold, gutsy canvas on which to work. And that is what Bernstein did with these pieces. And he did it for the first time, and he did it better than anybody. I mean, even if you take the least popular of all of these symphonies, number 87, which has one of the most beautiful tunes in the finale you've ever heard in your life. It's dun da da da, ya da 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 ba ba, ya da 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 da. Oh, it's gorgeous, gorgeous. But the opening is all top and bottom. It's da 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 bum ba da 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 cha 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 ba 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 like that. But underneath that, the orchestra is pumping away the bass line like this. It's got a sound like volcanic underneath there. There's an earthquake happening underneath that lovely opening tune. And here is where you hear it more than any period instrument group in the universe. You hear the bass lines. You hear the muscle, the fiber, the athleticism of this music. Even in one of the more elegant and small scale of all the Paris symphonies, there's still bigness and just, I mean, grandeur and excitement and energy, just this volcanic energy that's always present in this music. In the Capriccio Largo, which is a slow movement, which period instrument people always play double tempo, and it's horrible, of number 86. One of the most beautiful and nifty and spacey and spiritual slow movements that Haydn ever wrote. I mean, Bernstein gets it. He just gets it. You hear the period instrument people, they go blum, 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 da, 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 blum, blum. It's horrible. Everything's disconnected here. It's da, 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 and the harmony spreads out. Yeah, it's amazing. Just amazing. And the opening theme of the first movement of 86, which I always scream about because it's da-da-dum bum bum ba-da-dum 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 bum bum. It's like that. But the whole orchestra is doing the three note things. Bum 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 bum. And the violins have da-dum, the first two notes of each little phraselet. And in every period instrument performance, and a lot of modern instrument performances, you don't even hear the tune because you don't hear those violins. All you hear is bum 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 bum. When the violins are somewhere, they're going. No, you have a tune. He knows you have a tune. You see, one of the things about Leonard Bernstein that is always sort of, he's taken for granted, and he's often accused of being this sort of, emotional, self-indulgent, narcissistic, sort of, navel-gazing, romantic, excessive something or other, which is, it's just so not true. Again, this has got the same attention that he gives Mahler. You hear him completely losing himself in the music, in doing exactly what Haydn seems to want him to do, or going where the music wants to go. But he's so strong in basic musicality. We're not talking about, romantic excess in works of this period. We're talking about fundamental musical values, good rhythm, attention to dynamics, attention to balance. I mean, that is what these performances have. And he does it with a big orchestra, and he does it with completely uninhibited abandon, which is what Haydn deserves. I mean, Haydn should be as big and bold and gutsy as Beethoven or anybody who came later. He's as radical and amazing and colorful and interesting as Mahler. And you should play it like Mahler. And when you do play it like Mahler, that is, as if it was written yesterday for a full orchestra to be used to the maximum of its capabilities, you get this. You get one of the greatest sets of records ever made, the recording that I would want if I could only have one by Leonard Bernstein, and that shows his qualities as a sterling musician and servant of the composer, as well as anything else he ever did or that anyone else ever did. And that's the truth. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.